The rusted transport bus wheezed to a stop in a cloud of diesel exhaust, its brakes screaming like a wounded animal. Through the grimy windows, Camp Ironwood stretched out like a concrete wasteland rows of identical barracks. Obstacle courses that looked designed by sadists, and drill sergeants prowling the grounds like hungry wolves. Maya Torres pressed her face against the glass, her breath fogging the window as she took in what would be her home for the next 16 weeks. Jesus Christ. "Look at this one," came a voice from the back of the bus. Maya turned to see a mountain of a man pointing directly at her, his thick finger adorned with a high school class ring that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Did the Army start recruiting from elementary schools? The laughter that erupted was cruel and immediate. 23 other recruits, all of them, looking like they'd been carved from granite and fed on protein powder, turned to stare at Maya's diminutive frame. At 5'2" and barely 100 pounds soaking wet, she looked more like someone's little sister who'd wandered onto the wrong bus than a future soldier. "Maybe she's lost," suggested another recruit, a blonde girl with arms like tree trunks. "Someone should call her mommy to come pick her up." Maya said nothing. She'd learned long ago that words were often the weakest weapon in any arsenal. Instead, she gathered her single duffel bag, a pathetic contrast to the massive military surplus gear the others hauled, and shuffled toward the bus exit. Her oversized uniform, clearly the smallest size available, but still comically large on her frame, rustled with each step the moment her boots hit the asphalt. The real show began. "Listen up, maggots." The voice belonged to Drill Sergeant Williams, a man who looked like he'd been assembled from spare tank parts and bad intentions. His campaign had cast a shadow over eyes that had seen too many wars and broken too many recruits. "You are now the property of the United States Army. You will eat when I say eat. You will sleep when I say sleep. You will breathe when the first say." His speech died mid-sentence as his gaze fell on Maya. For a moment, something flickered across his weathered features, confusion, perhaps even concern. "Torres," he barked, consulting his clipboard. "Maya Torres." "Here, Drill Sergeant." Maya's voice was steady, clear, and completely at odds with her appearance. Williams approached her like a predator sizing up prey. "How old are you, Torres?" 22, Drill Sergeant." 22? He circled her slowly. "You sure about that? Because you look like you should be selling Girl Scout cookies, not carrying a rifle." More laughter from the formation. Maya kept her eyes forward, her expression neutral. She'd perfected this mask over years of practice, the art of appearing harmless, forgettable weak. "Tell me, Torres," Williams continued, his voice dripping with theatrical disdain, "what makes you think you can survive what we're about to put you through? Because I've seen grown men, real men, wash out of this program crying for their mothers. I'll do my best, Drill Sergeant." "Your best?" Williams threw back his head and laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Your best won't be good enough when Rodriguez." Here he gestured to the mountain of muscle who'd mocked. "Or on the bus is trying to pound you into. Hamburger during combatives training." Rodriguez stepped forward, cracking his knuckles with sounds like gunshots. At 6'4" and easily 220, he looked like he could bench press a small car. His neck was thicker than Maya's waist, and his hands were the size of dinner plates. "Maybe we should test that theory right now," Williams mused, his eyes gleaming with malicious entertainment. "Rodriguez, you feel like giving our little princess here a preview of what's coming." The circle of recruits tightened, sensing blood in the water. This was better than cable television watching the smallest, weakest member of their group get demolished would. Establish the pecking order immediately and provide entertainment for weeks to come. Rodriguez grinned, revealing teeth that had clearly seen their share of fights. "Happy to help, Drill Sergeant." The makeshift fighting circle formed naturally, recruits jostling for the best view. Someone started taking bets not on who would win, but on how long Maya would remain conscious. The odds weren't favorable. "Standard combatives rules," Williams announced, clearly enjoying himself. "No weapons, no eye gouging, no groin shots. Fight until one of you taps out or can't continue. Torres, you sure you don't want to forfeit now? Save yourself some hospital time?" Maya stepped into the circle, her movements careful and measured. She looked even smaller surrounded by the crowd of eager faces. "I'm ready, Drill Sergeant." Rodriguez bounced on his toes, shadowboxing briefly to warm up. His fists cut through the air with audible whooshes. "Don't worry, sweetheart," he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'll try to make this quick." The laughter was deafening now. Someone shouted, "Somebody call the medic." Another voice added, "And the coroner." Williams raised his hand. "Begin." Rodriguez charged like an enraged bull, his massive frame covering the distance between them in 2 thunderous steps. His right fist, easily the size of a small ham, whistled toward Maya's head with enough force to cave in the skull. What happened next defied every expectation, every assumption, every natural law the witnesses thought they understood. Maya didn't dodge backward or to the side like any sane person would. Instead, she stepped forward, inside Rodriguez's swing, her movement so fluid it seemed choreographed. Her left hand caught his wrist, not to block it, but to guide it past her head by mere inches. At the same moment, her right hand found a pressure point, just below his elbow that most people didn't even know existed. Rodriguez's arm went instantly numb. His eyes widened in shock and confusion as his limb refused to obey his commands. But Maya wasn't finished. Using his own momentum against him, she pivoted on her left foot, her right leg sweeping behind his knees while her hands guided his now useless arm in a direction joints weren't meant to bend. Rodriguez, all 220 pounds of him, went airborne. The impact when he hit the ground was tremendous, a wet, meaty sound that made several recruits wince. Dust exploded around his body as he lay there, gasping like a fish out of water, his eyes rolled back and showing white. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Maya stood over Rodriguez's motionless form, not even breathing hard. Her uniform was still perfectly arranged, not a hair out of place. She looked down at the fallen giant with what might have been mild concern. "Should I call the medic, Drill Sergeant?" she asked, her voice carrying clearly in the stunned quiet. Williams stared at the scene before him, his clipboard forgotten in his hands. In 30 years of military service, across 3 wars and countless training cycles, he had never seen anything like what had just occurred. Rodriguez wasn't just beaten, he was dismantled, taken apart with surgical precision by someone who looked like she should be asking for help reaching items on high shelves. "What the hell?" someone whispered from the crowd. Rodriguez groaned and tried to sit up, his movements unsteady and confused. Maya immediately knelt beside him, her hands moving to check his pulse and examine his pupils with the practiced efficiency of a field medic. "He'll be fine," she announced. "Just had his bell rung a little. The numbness in his arm should wear off in about 10 minutes. Williams found his voice. "Where did you learn to fight like that, Torres?" Maya looked up at him, and for just a moment, something flickered behind her eyes, something cold and ancient and very, very dangerous. Then it was gone, replaced by the same harmless expression she'd worn since stepping off the bus. "YouTube, Drill Sergeant," she said with a perfectly straight face. "Lots of good tutorials online these days." The laughter that followed was nervous, uncertain. Nobody was quite sure what they'd just witnessed, but they all knew one thing for certain. Maya Torres was not what she appeared to be. The next 72 hours at Camp Ironwood passed in a blur of regulation haircuts, uniform fittings, and endless paperwork. Maya Torres had become something of a celebrity among the recruits. Half of them regarded her with newfound respect, while the other half watched her with the wary suspicion reserved for unexploded ordnance. Rodriguez himself had taken to giving her a wide berth, though he'd grudgingly admitted to anyone who'd listened that he'd never been hit by a truck that small before. But it was on the fourth night that Maya truly began to reveal the depths of her impossibility. The night infiltration course was Camp Ironwood's crown jewel of misery, a 2-mile gauntlet of razor wire, motion sensors, guard towers, and obstacles designed by engineers who clearly harbored deep resentments against the human race. Most recruits took between 45 minutes to an hour to complete it, assuming they completed it at all. The record, held by a Navy SEAL instructor 3 years prior, was 28 minutes and 14 seconds. "Listen up, maggots!" Drill Sergeant Williams stood before the assembled recruits at 2,200 hours, his voice cutting through the humid Georgia night like a rusty blade. "Tonight you get to play hide and seek with technology that can spot a mouse fart from half a mile away. Your mission is simple: infiltrate the compound, retrieve the flag from the center building, and extract without being detected. Get caught by the sensors, and you start over. Get caught 3 times, and you spend the rest of the week scrubbing latrines with a toothbrush." The recruits shifted nervously. In the distance, the course sprawled before them like a mechanical spider web, its sensor arrays blinking red in the darkness. Floodlights swept back and forth in predetermined patterns, and the silhouettes of guard towers loomed against the star-filled sky. "Torres!" Williams barked. "Since you seem to think you're some kind of ninja, you get to go first. Show us what YouTube taught you about stealth." Maya stepped forward, her small frame almost invisible in the standard-issue black fatigues. "Yes, Drill Sergeant. You've got 1 hour," Williams said, tapping his watch. "Clock starts now." Maya melted into the darkness. That was the only way Sergeant First Class Jennifer Hayes, monitoring the security station, could describe what she witnessed on the thermal imaging display. One moment, Maya Torres was clearly visible as a bright human-shaped blob on the screen. The next moment, she simply wasn't. "What the hell?" Hayes muttered, adjusting the sensitivity on her equipment. The thermal cameras were military-grade, capable of detecting body heat through concrete walls. Nothing human could simply disappear from them. She switched to infrared. Nothing. Motion. Sensors. Silent. Ground vibration detectors. Not even a whisper. "Williams," she radioed to the drill sergeant. "I've lost visual on your recruit." "What do you mean, lost visual?" "I mean she's gone. Vanished. Like she was never there." Williams grabbed his own radio, scanning the course with high-powered binoculars. "Torres, sound off." Silence. For 17 minutes, Maya Torres existed in a state that defied every law of physics and military technology. The most sophisticated surveillance system in the continental United States equipment worth more than most people's houses registered absolutely nothing. No heat signature, no movement, no electromagnetic disturbance. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist. The first indication that she was still alive came when the motion sensor at the compound's rear entrance briefly flickered. Hayes leaned forward, studying her screens intently. "I've got something," she reported. "Rear perimeter, Sector 7. But it's weird. Define weird." The sensor triggered for exactly 0.3 seconds. That's not enough time for a human to pass through the detection field. It's like something moved through it at impossible speed. 2 minutes later, the thermal camera in the central building registered a temperature anomaly, a brief cold spot that appeared and disappeared so quickly the computer almost dismissed it as a sensor malfunction. Then the flag was gone. "She's got the objective," Hayes reported, her voice tight with disbelief. but I never saw her enter the building. The flag just disappeared. The extraction was even more impossible than the infiltration. Security cameras throughout the compound began experiencing brief, inexplicable malfunctions, not failures, but moments where the image seemed to skip, like frames missing from a film reel. During these micro-blackouts, which lasted no more than a few seconds each, Maya somehow traversed distances that should have taken minutes to cover. She materialized at the extraction point, like a ghost stepping out of the ether. The captured flag tucked neatly into her belt. Her breathing was steady, her uniform immaculate. She looked like she'd been out for a leisurely evening stroll. Williams stared at his stopwatch in stunned silence. 16 minutes, 42 seconds, he announced, his voice barely above a whisper. The assembled recruits erupted in disbelief. The previous record had been obliterated by nearly 12 minutes. More disturbing than the time, however, was the complete absence of any evidence that Maya had actually completed the course. The security footage showed nothing. The sensor logs were clean. If not for the missing flag in her possession, there would be no proof she'd even attempted the infiltration. How? Williams demanded. Maya shrugged, the gesture somehow managing to convey both innocence and something far more unsettling. I stayed low, moved slow, avoided the patrol patterns. The thermal cameras must have been malfunctioning. All of them? Simultaneously? Technology's unreliable sometimes. But it wasn't just a night course. Over the following days, Maya's impossible performances began to stack up like evidence in a case no one wanted to prosecute. During the combat marksmanship test, she fired a perfect score with a rifle she claimed never to have used before. When the range master examined her target, he found something that made his blood run cold. All 30 rounds had passed through the exact same hole. The paper looked like it had been struck by a single, impossibly precise bullet. Beginner's luck, Maya explained when questioned. In the tactical assessment simulation, she was placed in command of a squad tasked with defending a position against overwhelming odds. The computer-generated enemy force was designed to be unbeatable. A teaching tool meant to demonstrate the importance of strategic withdrawal and calling for backup. Maya's squad didn't retreat. Instead, she positioned her virtual soldiers in formations that the computer's tactical database didn't recognize, using strategies that seemed to anticipate the enemy's moves before they were made. The simulation ended with a complete victory that the programmers had deemed mathematically impossible. Lucky guesses, she said, when the instructors demanded an explanation. But it was the hand-to-hand combat sessions that truly began to unnerve everyone. Maya didn't just defeat her opponents. She dismantled them with surgical precision, using techniques that weren't taught in any military manual. She could disable a man twice her size without appearing to exert any effort, targeting pressure points and nerve clusters with the accuracy of a medical textbook. When Corporal Jackson, still smarting from Rodriguez's humiliation, challenged her to a rematch, Maya put him down in 4 seconds flat. Jackson, a former college wrestler with arms like steel cables, found himself face down in the dirt before he even realized the fight had begun. "Where did you learn that?" demanded Master Sergeant Peterson, the camp's chief combatives instructor. "Self-defense classes," Maya replied, helping the groaning Jackson to his feet with surprising gentleness. "What kind of self-defense classes?" "The effective kind." By the end of the week, Maya Torres had become something more than a recruit. She was a walking impossibility, a collection of skills and abilities that shouldn't exist in a single human being. The other recruits had stopped laughing. Now they whispered. And in the administrative offices, phones were beginning to ring. Captain David Foster had been having a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning until the encrypted message arrived on his secure terminal at 0347 hours. The sender was listed only as classification level. Cosmic, a designation, so far above his clearance level that he shouldn't have been able to receive it at all. The message itself was brief and terrifying in its simplicity. Run facial recognition on recruit Maya Torres. Priority Alpha. Report findings to Colonel Martinez immediately. Destroy this message after reading. Blackwater Division. Foster stared at the screen for a full minute, his coffee growing cold in his hands. Blackwater Division was a name whispered in the darkest corners of military intelligence, a unit that officially didn't exist, handling operations that never happened. The fact that they were interested in a basic training recruit was like discovering the CIA was investigating a kindergarten student. His hands trembled slightly as he initiated the facial recognition protocol. The military's biometric database was vast, containing records of every service member, contractor, and person of interest, dating back decades. If Maya Torres existed anywhere in the system, the computer would find her. The search completed in 47 seconds. Foster's coffee mug shattered against the floor. According to the database, Maya Torres had died 3 years ago in a single car accident outside Tucson, Arizona. The death certificate was genuine, signed by the county coroner and filed with the state. There were photographs of the crash scene, a mangled Honda Civic wrapped around a telephone pole, the driver's body burned beyond recognition. Dental records had confirmed identity, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the second file that appeared when he cross-referenced the facial recognition data. This one was marked with security classifications that made his security clearance look like a library card. The photograph showed the same face, the same delicate features, but the name was different. Agent 7, Project Black Viper. Status: terminated. Foster's hands shook as he scrolled through what little information his clearance allowed him to access. Project Black Viper had been a classified military program, operational from 2019 to 2022. The details were heavily redacted. But what remained painted a picture of something that belonged in a nightmare rather than a personnel file. Enhanced operatives, experimental conditioning, psychological reconstruction, elimination protocols, and then, stamped across the file in red letters, project terminated, all assets neutralized. Foster reached for his secure phone, then stopped. If Maya Torres was supposed to be dead, if Agent 7 was supposed to be neutralized, then someone had made a very serious mistake. Or someone was playing a very dangerous game. He decided he needed to see for himself. That evening, Foster made his way to the recruit barracks under the pretense of a routine inspection. The building was quiet. Most of the recruits either asleep or engaged in the time-honored military tradition of complaining about their circumstances in hushed tones. Maya's bunk was in the far corner, isolated from the others. As Foster approached, he noticed something odd. The other recruits had unconsciously arranged their sleeping areas to avoid her space, creating a buffer zone of empty bunks around her. It was as if some primitive instinct warned them to keep their distance. Maya herself was nowhere to be seen. Foster checked his watch. 2,130 hours. Lights out wasn't for another 30 minutes, but her bunk was empty, her gear neatly arranged with military precision. He was about to leave when he noticed something that made his blood freeze. Her footlocker was open. Military protocol demanded that personal storage be secured at all times. Leaving a footlocker unlocked was a serious infraction, the kind of mistake that earned a recruit weeks of extra duty. But Maya Torres didn't seem like someone who made mistakes. Foster glanced around the barracks. The other recruits were absorbed in their own activities, paying him no attention. He approached the footlocker and carefully lifted the lid. Inside, beneath the regulation uniforms and personal items, his fingers found something that shouldn't exist. A small, metallic device about the size of a smartphone, but impossibly thin. The surface was smooth, almost organic-looking, and warm to the touch despite the cool evening air. Strange symbols flickered across its surface. Not quite letters, not quite numbers, but something that hurt to look at directly. Foster had seen a lot of classified technology during his 15-year career, but this was beyond anything in the current military arsenal. The device seemed to pulse with its own internal light, and when he held it up to examine it more closely, the symbols rearranged themselves into patterns that almost made sense, as if the machine was trying to communicate with him. "You shouldn't have looked." The voice came from directly behind him, soft and conversational, as if Maya was commenting on the weather. Foster spun around, his heart hammering against his ribs. Maya stood 3 feet away, having appeared with the silence of falling snow. She was dressed in standard-issue PT gear, but there wasn't a drop of sweat on her despite the fact that she'd somehow materialized from thin air. Her dark eyes fixed on the device in his hands with an expression of mild disappointment. "How did you?" Foster began, then stopped. The more important question was how long she'd been watching him. "Where did you come from?" "I was taking a walk," Maya said, stepping closer. "Couldn't sleep. Sometimes the dreams get too loud." Foster looked down at the device in his hands, then back at her face. In the dim light of the barracks, her features seemed different, somehow sharper, more predatory. "What is this thing?" "Something that doesn't exist," Maya replied. "Something that was never made, by people who were never born, for a project that never happened." As she spoke, the device in Foster's hands began to grow warm, then hot. The symbols on its surface flared brighter, cycling through patterns that seemed to burn themselves into his retinas. He tried to drop it, but his fingers wouldn't obey. "The problem with looking into classified files," Maya continued, her voice taking on a strange, hypnotic quality, "is that sometimes the files look back." The device was burning now, searing his palms, but Foster couldn't let go. The symbols were moving faster, creating patterns that seemed to reach directly into his brain. He could feel his memories shifting, rearranging themselves like puzzle pieces being forced into new configurations. "What are you doing to me?" he gasped. "Protecting a secret that's already killed too many people," Maya said sadly. "I'm sorry, Captain. I really am." The device crumbled to dust in his hands, the particles falling through his fingers like sand. The burning sensation vanished instantly, leaving only the faint smell of ozone and something else, something organic and wrong. Foster blinked, disoriented. He was standing in the recruit barracks, but he couldn't remember why he'd come here. There was supposed to be an inspection, wasn't there? But his clipboard was empty, and the recruits were all accounted for. "Sir?" Maya Torres stood nearby, looking concerned. "Are you feeling all right? You look a little pale." Foster stared at her, a nagging sense that something important had just happened dancing at the edge of his consciousness. But the harder he tried to grasp it, the more it slipped away. "I'm fine," he said automatically. "Just tired. Carry on, recruit." As he walked away, Foster couldn't shake the feeling that he was forgetting something crucial. But by the time he reached his office, even that sensation had faded. Behind him, Maya Torres watched his retreating figure with eyes that held depths no 22-year-old should possess. In her hand, invisible to any observer, another impossible device flickered briefly before vanishing into whatever pocket dimension had spawned it. Some secrets, she reflected, were worth any price to keep, even if that price was measured in human memory. The helicopter's rotors were still spinning when Colonel Marcus Martinez hit the ground running at 0347 hours, his boots striking the tarmac with the urgency of a man racing against time itself. He'd been pulled from a classified briefing in Washington, D.C., told only that Black Viper protocols had been activated and given coordinates to Camp Ironwood. In 32 years of military service, spanning 3 wars and operations that would never see the light of day. Martinez had never moved so fast. The base was eerily quiet as he strode through the pre-dawn darkness, his aides struggling to keep pace. Emergency lighting cast long shadows between the buildings, and a few personnel on duty snapped to attention as the colonel passed, recognizing the insignia of someone far above their pay grade. "Sir," his aide panted, consulting a tablet as they walked, "the recruit in question is currently in the mess hall. Arrived approximately 20 minutes ago." Martinez didn't slow down. "Alone?" "Yes, sir. The other recruits won't be called for chow for another 2 hours." Of course she was alone. Agent 7 had always preferred solitude. It made the killing easier. The mess hall door swung open with a metallic groan, revealing a cavernous space filled with empty tables and chairs. Industrial lighting hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the linoleum floor. At a table in the far corner, a small figure sat with her back to the entrance, methodically eating what appeared to be a bowl of cereal. She didn't look up when Martinez entered, didn't acknowledge his presence at all. She simply continued eating, each spoonful measured and deliberate, as if she had all the time in the world. Martinez dismissed his aide with a gesture and approached slowly, his hand instinctively moving to the sidearm at his hip, not that it would do any good. If this was really Agent 7, conventional weapons would be about as effective as harsh language. "Hello, Colonel," Maya said without turning around, her voice carrying clearly in the empty space. "Took you longer than expected. I was beginning to think the old communication networks had finally broken down completely." Martinez stopped 10 feet away, close enough to confirm what he already knew, but far enough to maintain the illusion of safety. "Agent 7, that's not my name anymore." Maya finally turned in her chair, and Martinez felt his breath catch. The face was the same delicate features, dark eyes, the kind of appearance that made people underestimate her until it was far too late. But there was something different now, something that hadn't been there during the project. A weariness that went deeper than bone, older than her apparent years. "Maya Torres died 3 years ago," Martinez said carefully. "Yes, she did." Maya returned to her cereal, stirring it absently. "Car accident outside Tucson. Very tragic. I attended the funeral, actually. Nice service. Her parents were devastated. Whose identity did you steal?" "I didn't steal anything." Maya Torres was a real person, a kindergarten teacher who loved children and wanted to make the world a better place. She also happened to look enough like me to pass casual inspection. Maya's spoon clinked against the bowl. "When she died, I thought it might be nice to try being someone good for a change. Someone who helped people instead of..." She gestured vaguely. "Well, you know what I used to do." Martinez pulled out a chair and sat down across from her, studying her face for any sign of deception. Agent 7 had been many things: a killer, a ghost, a weapon wrapped in human skin, but she'd never been a liar. The project was terminated. All assets were neutralized, were they? Maya looked up, and for a moment, Martinez saw something flicker behind her eyes, something cold and vast and utterly inhuman. "Or did you just tell yourselves that to sleep better at night?" The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of classified horrors and buried secrets. Project Black Viper had been the military's attempt to create the perfect operative soldiers, enhanced beyond human limitations. Their minds rebuilt from the ground up to eliminate weakness, doubt, and mercy. For 3 years, it had produced results that defied belief. And then, one night in 2022, every facility had gone dark. Every researcher had been found dead. Every test subject had vanished without a trace. The official report blamed a catastrophic system failure. The truth was far worse. "How many of you survived?" Martinez asked quietly. "Does it matter?" "We're ghosts, Colonel. Echoes of a program that should never have existed." Most of us just want to be left alone. Maya pushed her bowl away, the cereal barely touched. I've been Maya Torres for 3 years. I taught children to read. I volunteered at animal shelters. I tried to be normal. Then why are you here? Why enlist? Maya was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. Because the world is about to end, and apparently, even ghosts have a sense of duty. Before Martinez could ask what she meant, alarms began blaring throughout the base. Emergency lighting bathed the mess hall in pulsing red, and his radio crackled to life with urgent voices reporting impossible readings on the perimeter sensors. Sir. The voice belonged to the base commander, barely controlled panic bleeding through the static. We've got multiple aircraft approaching from the southeast. They're not responding to radio contact, and their signatures don't match anything in our database. Martinez was already moving, but Maya remained seated, her expression calm. You should evacuate the base, she said conversationally. Get everyone to the bunkers. This is going to get messy. What's happening? The same thing that happened to the Black Viper facilities 3 years ago. They found me. Maya stood slowly, and as she did, something fundamental seemed to shift in the air around her. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant, and the fluorescent lights began to flicker. I'd hoped I could stay hidden longer, but apparently, teaching kindergarten doesn't provide enough cover when you're being hunted by things that shouldn't exist. Through the mess hall windows, Martinez could see lights in the sky, not aircraft, but something else entirely. They moved with impossible grace, defying physics and common sense in equal measure. As he watched, one of the guard towers simply ceased, not destroyed, not damaged. It was there one moment and gone the next, as if it had never existed at all. What are they? He whispered. Maya walked to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. The cleanup crew. The people who decided that Project Black Viper was too dangerous to exist, even as a memory. They've been hunting us for 3 years, erasing every trace of what we were. And you're going to fight them? Maya turned back to him, and Martinez saw something that made his blood freeze. She was smiling, not the gentle expression of a kindergarten teacher, but the predatory grin of something that had been designed to kill gods. Colonel, she said softly, I am Agent 7 of Project Black Viper. I was created to be the perfect weapon, trained to eliminate targets that conventional forces couldn't touch, and conditioned to feel no fear, no doubt, no mercy. The lights flickered again, and her shadow seemed to move independently of her body. Maya Torres was a good person who wanted to help children learn to read. She walked toward the exit, her footsteps silent on the linoleum floor. But Maya Torres is dead, she called over her shoulder. And apparently, the world needs monsters again. The mess hall doors swung shut behind her, leaving Martinez alone with the alarms and the growing certainty that he was about to witness something that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. Outside, Agent 7 went to war.